Good morning, colleagues, and welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, the last meeting of the calendar year, unless something urgent crops up. Thank you very much indeed for attending. Thank you to the officers who will present to us and clerk the meeting, and also thank you to the public and press watching on the live stream. So start with apologies for absence, and I'll ask our officer Anne Gardiner about that.
Apologies received from Councillor Atkins, substituted by Councillor Coles.
Thank you very much indeed. Members must declare whether they have a disclosable pecuniary interest or other interest in any of the items on the agenda, unless it's already entered in the register of members' interests. Are there any such declarations to be made? No. Okay. And also, we've had since the last meeting a change of membership, so I'd like to welcome Councillor Simon Smith, who has attended these meetings before, as now one of the two full members from Cambridge City Council, as Councillor Bagent has now stepped down. Councillor Jenny Garthrop takes over the role of substitute member. So we go then to item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting and the action log. Are members happy to accept the minutes of the previous meeting as an accurate record of what happened? No objections to that, so we will. We also have an action log. So does anybody wish to pick up anything on the action log? There is one item on there referring to an informal meeting which did not take place due to ill health. So that's item 10 of the meeting of 17th October. The virtual briefing session did not happen. So I am wondering whether we want to schedule that informal meeting. It's been suggested that there may be 3 dates available, the 9th, the 12th or the 14th of December, if we want an additional meeting before Christmas. I believe that the 9th was that? Perhaps Anne can explain what the options might be.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the 9th would be an AM, probably around 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. And the 12th and the 14th are relatively free, so any time on those 2 dates, if members have availability.
Do members want to home in on a date now while we're all here, or would you prefer to take that away and come back to Anne at the risk that some members may get taken over by other duties and fail to do so? Right, okay, thank you. Councillor Coles can only do the 12th. How does that look for others? 12th of December.
So either the 9th of December in the morning, or the 12th or the 14th of December, which could be any time.
You prefer to come back. Okay, thank you. If we are happy then with the action log, which I believe we are, then if we could move on, please, to the next item, which is public questions. We have no public questions. So we'll move on to item 5, which is the improvement framework. And we have Angela Probert, who is the Interim Programme Director for Transformation, joining us online. So perhaps if Angela could introduce herself and say what she would like to say by way of introduction. Angela.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you all hear me first of all?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, I'm pleased to join today. I'm Angela Probert, the Interim Director for the Transformation Programme. And Chair, what has been attached to the agenda and to the brief report is the report to go to the CA board this week on Wednesday, the 30th. And what this report sets out are highlight reports, and it's the first report to board on the progress that has been made in October against actions that have been set out in the plan. The report also sets out risks and how they are mitigated. And we're keen for any feedback on this format because as we progress, we can learn and develop the approach as part of the overall improvement programme. It is proposed that highlight reports will be prepared on a monthly basis and shared not only with the CA board, but also with yourselves. But as I say, this first highlight report is for progress in October. Paragraph 3.3 of the report sets out the risks and how they are to be mitigated. And paragraph 4 sets out the progress that's been made on the establishment of the improvement board. And members will be aware who the improvement board members are. And what I can share is that the chair, Lord Kerslake, has already met with the deputy mayor, and meetings have either taken place or diaried with external stakeholders. So it's good that progress is being made. And whilst the induction day will not take place until the 17th of January because of diary commitments, then Lord Kerslake is already engaged and involved and is meeting with the chief exec and, as I say, external stakeholders. And Chair, we'll be able to report back at future meetings on the progress. Chair, you will have also received at the end of last week a letter that has been sent to the external auditor from the chief exec, and hopefully members of Overview and Scrutiny will have been sent a copy. So again, that is very recent, and we thought it was good that you receive a copy of that. And lastly, Chair, before there are any questions, it's good to report that it's really positive that chief execs from constituent authorities are both engaged and involved in the improvement programme across each themes. And lastly, if Overview and Scrutiny wish in the future meetings to have any specific briefings or update on any one of the themes, we'd be pleased to bring the identified officers who are leading any of the themes. So Chair, I will leave it at that and ask if there are any sort of questions that I can respond or indeed feed into the report to board on Wednesday.
Thank you very much indeed, Angela. That was commendably brief and clear, and I hope members will be similarly brief and clear in their questions and responses to that. So I'm going to start with Councillor Hay.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Angela. You mentioned that we should be aware of who's on the improvement board. I, for one, am not. So if we could be given that information. You also mentioned we should have seen a letter that was sent to the external auditor. There again, I've been on holiday, so I could have missed it, but I've spoken to one or two others and they haven't seen it either. So if we could have a copy of that. Within the report, in the improvement framework report, it mentions a new staffing structure for the chief executive team and support for the mayor to be. I would ask that that be shared with ONS members together with the executive team, senior structure and job descriptions. So we all know over the last year or so there's been quite a few departures, and it's getting to the stage where it's difficult to know who's responsible for what. So that would be very helpful if you could arrange that, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hay. I certainly did receive a copy of the letter to the external auditor. I wasn't aware that other members may not. Did other members not receive that letter? No, it's not ringing any bells. Joe.
Sorry, rather than myself, I think it came from Leanne Young. So if you check your inboxes from on that address. That may be where the confusion lay.
Very well. If members have not received it, then I'm sure I can dig it out and
But we can get it out to you
as
again.
well.
Yeah.
We can recirculate that, can't we? Yes, I'm sorry if members did not receive that. I certainly did, and I thought everyone had. Angela, there was a request there from Councillor Hay for basic information, structural information, organisation charts, and so on. Is that doable?
Very doable, Councillor Hay and Chair. I will have that sent. I will have that sent to all members of the committee by tomorrow. And apologies about the letter. My understanding was that not only had it gone to the chair, it had also gone to members. So we will make sure, Chair, that that goes out. And the Improvement Board, we will set that out for you. Just very briefly, Lord Kerslake is the chair. Julie Spence, OBE, is the deputy chair, and some of you may know Julie from the region. Anne Shaw is another of the members. Anne is currently the exec director for transport at the West Midlands Combined Authority, and there are 3 member peers. And Chair, I'm not going to embarrass myself without looking and get that wrong, but I will send those out. That it has been made available. So again, apologies that it's not been sent directly to you. So the information that you have asked for will come to you by the end of tomorrow at the latest.
Thank you very much indeed, Angela. Questions, other questions, comments from members of the committee? We were asked specifically by Angela how we felt about the presentation of the information that we've been given in this report. Do members feel that that has been well done, that it's useful information, that it's clearly presented? Is there anything they would be expecting to be done differently in that respect? No. If I could ask you, Angela, the report covers the 6 work streams which were agreed some little while ago, and one of them, work stream E, seemed to be particularly problematic. I like the presentation of being able to see the RAG status last time compared to this time, because that gives a sense of movement and hopefully movement in the right direction. So I thought that was an extremely helpful way of presenting the information. But work stream E seems to be stubbornly amber, and I'm wondering whether you could tell us a little about that. It seems to be a balance between needing to move things forward speedily, but also with consultation seems to be one of the issues there, I think. Could you tell us a bit more about what the
Of course,
constraints
Chair.
are and how you're overcoming that?
Yes, Chair. So Chair, this just for committees understanding, this work stream E is the design and implementation of an organisation for today's performance with the agility to act on emerging demands and opportunities. So they're all interlinked. They are all absolutely critical. But this is the one where there is more activity that's required that isn't, such as, Chair, in your earlier question about, Councillor Hayes' question about staffing structures. This is about understanding what the performance management framework needs to be. Is also to understand how that links then with the risk management training, and how we understand and put in place what good performance management looks like and learn from other authorities. So it's not stubbornly amber, but we're flagging it as amber because we don't want to present a picture that everything is absolutely on track when we know that this will be an area that, yes, we will make progress on it, but will take slightly longer and will require more focus, such as the performance management software that will be required. So across the combined authority, performance management, both to you as a committee, but also how it's used within the combined authority in terms of to focus on where activity needs to more attention. These are key and are not things that can be done in 5 minutes. So we are realistic and focused, and again, understanding how we need to take that forward. The chief executive who is engaged and involved in this is very clear in terms of what's being done, but actually is clear about the work that is required. So hopefully, Chair, it's an honest appraisal of where it's at, but we are clear what is required over the next period to ensure we deliver on what has been committed.
Thank you very much, Angela. Councillor Miscandlin.
Thank you very much, Chair. In 4.1, the Combined Authority Board in July approved £750,000 to support the scope of development. Is this all that is required, or will there be coming in later to request more monies to finance future projects?
Chair, in response to that, it's not intended at this time that further requests will be made based on the improvement activity that's been defined in the improvement plan. The range of activities that the improvement fund is covering is some staffing costs, such as myself, some activity with regards to the development of specific systems, but it's not intended at this point that more resources will be requested. And we're working closely with finance colleagues in the management of that budget so that we are content and comfortable with how that money is being spent.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any more questions. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I commend the structure of the way in which this is all laid out, but it's the content that's my concern, and the main concern is about the overarching strategy, and I don't really see any guiding framework for that. I mean, there was the original submission to government with the establishment of the combined authority and the targets, the doubling of GDP, and all those big, high aspirational targets. We've got powers and policy making and strategy making powers, and we've got budgets, and these create the framework for what the combined authority should be about. And this is number A in the Chief Executive's Improvement Plan key themes, about establishing the clarity of the public political ambition and the overarching strategy, and basically defining the purpose and role of the CPCA and where it can add value. And I don't see with all these work programs, I've got laudable, doing activities, but to what direction, what mission, what purpose, and how are they all going to, well, without that, how can we expect them to all align when they've done their work? So I can't really see how you can start all this without having that overarching strategy in place.
Angela, do you have any?
Yes, Chair, thank you for that. And it's a very important point that has been made with regards to the vision, the priorities, which in essence will drive activity and link to how resources are used, the values, the behaviours, the culture of the combined authority. And Chair, we are very clear in the improvement programme group, which is led, as you will be aware, by exec directors from across the combined authority, that all of these elements do interlink. There are interdependencies. There is a critical path that has been mapped. But Chair, also a lot of work has been done over the last 6 weeks on the vision and priorities in discussion with the Mayor prior to him going off through his sickness absence. And there have been discussions with staff, with councillors, through the leaders' strategy meeting, and also there is a discussion tomorrow with constituent chief executives. So Chair, it might be that you want at a future meeting to have a further in-depth look at what has been developed so far. It is intended that the vision, the priorities, the operating principles that will then lead to the other activity that will need to be undertaken, and certainly values, behaviours, that will be signed off by the CA board in January. So, Chair, it might be that is one of the areas that that this committee might want to have a further look at.
Thank you. Before I, sorry, do you finish?
I was just going to say, but please be assured, this is not just 2 or 3 lines on a highlight report. Significant activity has been undertaken in discussion with both members and indeed the mayor before he went off through sickness absence.
Thank you. Before I bring Councillor Dew in, that there's a lot of work in the plan for the next period on Workstream A that is taking place by the end of this month in terms of the drafting of various strategies and also engagement with various people during the course of the first half of December. So what's the timeline for all of that to really land?
So the activity, thank you, Chair. The activity, as I've shared with regards to the vision and priorities, there are discussion and engagement taking place over the next 4 weeks. In terms of the values and behaviours that is set down, and a key element of a key part of Workstream A is values and behaviours, and there is a staff session on the 8th of December where staff have been invited to face-to-face session, indeed in the room that you are sitting in now, so that part of the engagement with staff on the values and behaviours, building and learning from other combined authorities, from other constituent authorities in the region, building on the values that have been in place but not necessarily used across the combined authority, but also feeding out of the staff survey that was done in September of this year, that staff will come together on the 8th of December to do some work through a workshop on the future values and behaviour. And following that, there will be some sessions with board members on the outcome from the staff sessions, so that can then feed into what will then be taken to board at the end of January, with the intention that those will be signed off.
Right. Like you said, that looks like a significant piece of work for us for January before it goes to board. Councillor Dew.
I was going to ask very much those questions, Chair, other than the fact that there's 2 items that are due to be drafted by the end of November, which is Wednesday. Just wondering how we are on those. I know we're reporting on the current period, where I'm actually quite pleased with the results, considering where we started this a few months ago. I mean, it's important that we have the strategies in place, as one of my colleagues has just mentioned, but considering it was felt that we didn't to start with, I think it's heading the right way. Just one of those 2 November ones, which is the corporate strategy and the Mayor's ambition. Are we on target for those for the end of November? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Chair, we are on target in terms of them being drafted, but as I've shared, they will not go to board until the end of January. So obviously this reports in detail on October actions, but progress has been made and they are on track to be drafted by the end of November.
That's great. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I'm not seeing Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to try and tease something out. Because I've heard about the individuals, and I certainly know one of them on the improvement plan, on the improvement board, sorry. And obviously with the sad situation that the Mayor's health, we've got the Deputy Mayor sitting in. I'm just wondering how realistic it is that we get these various themes sort of finalised and finished, but also how it sits with the actual board. What's is the board still the overarching decision-making body, and where does the improvement board sit within that?
Thank you, Chair. The CA board both agreed the improvement plan back in October, but also are the owners of that improvement plan. So the improvement board will report to both in the CA board, but also to external stakeholders with regards to progress. That is in the terms of reference that you will have seen in previous month, was certainly appended to the board report in October, but it is the CA board that owns the improvement plan, and the improvement board will give a progress update in terms of its observations to both the CA board, but also external stakeholders.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wondered, as a sort of useful background going forward, report talks about the evaluation of 3 different options for performance management software. And I just wondered, were those being compared on the basis of sort of ease of use, or do they operate at different levels of abstraction? And, I could just be interesting to have an insight on how those function.
Thank you. Chair, I'd need to come back to Councillor on that question. I've not got the detail of what is being to hand, what systems are being looked at, and whether they will review, as the council has shared, in terms of which is most appropriate. But I'm happy to share post this meeting an update on that for you.
Thank you very much indeed. I think we can call this item to a close now. So thank you very much indeed, members, for your questions. Thank you very much, Angela, for your presentation. And we look forward to seeing more work on this early in the new year and being able to review it then. Thank you. And thank you very much, Angela.
Thank you.
Our next item is budget scrutiny, and I'm hoping we've got some significant items coming up, three major items, and I'm hoping to spend something like 20 minutes each on those in order to be able to spend the remaining 20 minutes on the last few items in order to reach the conclusion of our meeting. So I'm going to call now on, we have Rob Emery and John Alsop both online with us again to talk about the budget. So Rob and John, or Job and Ron, or whatever, John and Rob, take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, members. Just as an introduction, the last Overview and Scrutiny meeting, Rob Emery, who you'll know, presented a slide deck taking you through the development of the budget for next year and the medium-term financial plan so far. And some of the main points that were raised during that discussion was that following the budget setting of 22-23, the majority of the previous headroom in both the revenue and capital elements of the budget had largely been allocated out, meaning that that there was not very much capacity brought forward for new projects in this round of budget setting to be allocated, especially in the earlier years of the medium-term financial medium-term financial plans, and that formed the basis of the baseline position that we started from. The baseline was updated, as you'll recall, for known funding changes, and also for board decisions, and a review by relevant officers. And we did prepare for inflation risks, including to create some capital contingency to be allocated during the course of the year if it was needed. And that was largely funded by taking out interest in borrowing provision. At the moment, the Combined Authority doesn't have any borrowing. And we've also reviewed some of our other income streams. So, for example, the increase in interest rates has provided us with an anticipated additional funding stream from our Treasury balances. We did also highlight one particular emerging pressure relating to bus services. and that the board would need to consider a number of options, first of all, regarding the provision of services going forward, but also how it might address any funding gap between the level of service cost and the budget available. The principles and the timetable for the setting of the budget are set out in this paper, but this is an opportunity for the committee to ask any questions that you might have about the draft budget and the medium-term financial plan as it is at the moment, and it will be going to the board on Wednesday in draft form before going out to consultation. And both Rob and I are here to answer any questions you might have. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, John. That's very helpful. Members, questions? Shall I start with one in that case? Can I ask on 2.9? And I think one of the most significant concerns is bound to be the pressure on passenger transport budgets. The final 5 months of this year, the increased cost is expected to be 1.7 million, which was the amount originally set aside for this emergency reprocurement. I think when the board last met, we were told it was something of the order of 1.25 million that had actually been provided to the operators that came forward. Does that 1.7 mean that additional operators, additional routes have been able to be funded, and that 1.7 million will be now utilised in its entirety?
Well, we are. I think Rob was going to come in there actually, but yeah. So the decision is moving. We're obviously looking at the predicted additional budget pressure. I think the original budget gap was 1.7 million, and that was able to be contained within savings which have been identified, and that's just for this financial year. So we are looking at what the potential cost might be in a number of different scenarios. So one would be if we were to maintain existing levels of service. The last estimate was about 3.5 million. I think that might be coming down, but then again, there are increasing pressures. Obviously, the inflation pressure is cumulative, so there may be additional sort of costs going forward. So we do need to take a kind of a prudent approach to this. But also we're looking at different mechanisms to be able to look at providing the funding for that. And in addition to the bus services, there are a number of other bus-related pressures. So for example, there is inflation cost on energy costs relating to the real-time passenger information element of bus services. So that has pushed the overall envelope up to about 4.5 million, which is what we've based current calculations on. But again, we will be working over the next couple of months until such time as we come to set the final version of the budget in January. So we'll be able to get a better, more accurate estimate of what the cost is likely to be then. I don't know if Rob wants to add anything to that.
Only on the specifics of the 1.7 versus 1.2 million numbers. The latest I'd seen is that the gross cost of service was 1.4 million, and we're expecting the services to generate in the region of £200,000 that the operators will keep themselves. And so that nets it down to the 1.2 million actual cost of the CPCA forecast. The 1.7, as John said, was an early estimate. Although I believe there are, even at the end of the tender, I think there were one or two services which were not bid on. So returning to exactly the service we had before would indeed cost slightly more than the current 1.2 million, although presumably not full 1.7.
Thank you. And have we had any early indications from operators that more services are likely to be pulled by them? Do we have any? Have there been any approaches, any conversations?
Not that I'm aware of, but I can ask the transport team to provide an answer to that with their more up-to-date knowledge.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to, she didn't indicate first, but I'm going to come to Councillor Hay first as our bus member, as we're talking about buses, and then I have Councillor Hassel and Councillor Miscandlon indicating to speak. And also, sorry, Councillor Sharp. No, Right, I'm going to start again, and Councillor Sharp is our lead member on finance, so I'm going to start with Councillor Sharp, then Councillor Hay, then Councillor Hassel, and then Councillor Miscandlon, in that order. Sorry, apologies, Alan.
That's all right,
Over
thank
to
you. I'll leave buses for Councillor Hay, but I may come back after that. Just a couple of leading questions. In the report, you're talking about pay inflation budgeted of 5%, which is probably not unreasonable. But the actual report shows the transport grant to the constituent highway authorities, County Council and Peterborough, of 27,695, and that's spread across the next 4 years. So am I assuming from that we've got no inflation percentages in apart from pay? Because knowing some of building materials, inflation is running at 30% at the moment. So obviously that, you know, if we're keeping it flat line across the next 4 years, then we're going to get a lot less potholes filled than we are at the moment. So that's my first point, John.
Yeah. Do you want me to come in on that, John? So the highways maintenance grants in particular are a grant given to the CPCA by central government, which we effectively passport through to the two highways authorities as they deliver the works. That grant figure is the one that DfT has published and is indeed cash flat over the next 5 years. And so, as you say, if that does not change, there will be significantly lower real terms investment in the roads and more potholes than there were this year and last year. But as the broader picture, sorry, in terms of inflation, no, inflation is not only included on staffing. We have looked at inflation across other areas of the programme. That particular one is a pass-through grant and thus outside our control.
Okay, thank you. I'll leave it there for the moment.
Yep. Okay, thank you. And Councillor Hay, if you want to come in, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I must admit I was very concerned when reading this report to learn that the planned budget for 23-24 is 3.5 for the buses. It's estimated it's going to cost in the region of 7 million. Now, I put some questions to the transport team prior to this meeting, and one of the things they've come back with is that you're continuing to lobby government for additional funding to deliver on the revised BSIP, whilst exploring other funding options, both public and private sector, to deliver the revenue and capital support. Am I right in thinking one of these other funding options might well be a mayoral precept? And I think the GCP are looking at doing congestion charges. Would these go towards funding this gap?
We have had a couple of conversations with leaders at the leaders strategy meeting, and we've put a number of options for funding. In particular, looking at the buses pressure. So, and that, well, obviously we've been looking at our efficiencies within the organisation itself. We have been looking at the transport levy. We have been looking at how we can use best use reserves, but obviously the reserves are only a finite pot, so wouldn't provide a longer term solution. But one of the options that that the board might consider could be a mayoral precept. And we are, as you know, once the draft budget goes to board, and we will be highlighting it as an unbalanced budget at this time, given those pressures. But part of the consultation exercise will be to ask for our various stakeholders and the public to see what what their view of the options might be, both in terms of service provision and in terms of future funding, in order to be able to close any potential government funding gap.
Thank you, John. Councillor Hay, back again.
If I could just come back on that. You say you are looking at a mayoral precept. Under current regulations, how much is the mayor able to put on the precept before he has to have a referendum? Because obviously current cost of living is going up, and residents are going to be very, very concerned about this. So, yeah, I'd be very interested to know that.
Yeah. At this stage, I think that that there is no absolute limit to what the mayor could introduce a precept to. I think there was some discussion a couple of years ago when we were awarded that as a power in order to restrict the amount that a precept could go up year on year. But as far as I'm aware, that there is no set limit at this stage. What we have been looking at is first of all the potential quantum of the pressure, and what value a mayoral precept might need to be in order to be able to deliver on that funding gap. So, for example, £1 of precept on a Band B property per annum would raise about £290,000, which means that a £15 precept, an annual precept, would raise about 4.4 million. Obviously, we've been looking at also at other mayoral combined authorities across the country. I think at this stage there are only 2 others that have a precept, and of those of the order of between £20 and £30. So it's likely. Well, we will need to do the calculations when we've got a better idea of what the funding gap is in January, but that's hopefully an indication of the sorts of figures that we're looking at the moment.
Thank you, John. I mean, I think the bind we're in is that there are 2 sources of funding: national funding sources and local funding sources. And if we don't get national funding and we don't like all the options for local funding, we are in a bit of a bind. Councillor Hassel.
Yeah, I think my question was largely answered in the discussion from Councillor Hayes' question. But just to clarify, what I'm hearing is it sounds. I was going to ask really what the likelihood of all the options that you have in order to close the gap, which was most likely and which was most likely to raise revenue, and it sounds like the mayor's precept seems to be the favoured option at the moment. Am I correct?
Well, as I say, there's some work that we need to do on this. Obviously, as you'll be aware, the core funding of the combined authority is cash limited. So over the course of the 30-year devolution deal, we get £20 million per year as gain share funding. 8 million of that is revenue. 12 million of that is capital. There is no, at the moment, there is no inflation increase. Obviously, that's something that we will be and have been lobbying government for, both as a combined authority, but also in conjunction with all of the other combined authorities. It's very important that we get to a position where we have sustainable future funding in place. So there are other routes that we are looking at, but central government have in the past said that they would be looking for local taxation as being an element of combined authority funding going forward. So we really do need to look at all options.
Thank you. Councillor Miscandlin is next.
Thank you very much. All your budgeting seems to be at maintaining the bus services to their current level. I don't see anything in there about the improved bus services or the budgeting of the costs for that improved service. Can you give some light on that subject?
Yeah. No, those are the three options that I think we talk about in the paper. So obviously there is maintaining existing service levels. There is having service levels which are affordable in accordance with our current budget, which would mean a potential reduction in service. But also the third option is to, as you suggest, to increase service levels, to improve the regularity and potentially having additional routes. But obviously, even if we keep the existing levels of service, that would mean we've got a budget gap. If we were to increase service levels, then that would make that budget gap even bigger. So yes, it is an option, and that's something that we will be reflecting in the consultation document.
Thank you. Can you give us an idea of what progress is being made? Because obviously you've got to look into it and it's going forward. What are you looking at? How far ahead and how much?
I think that's probably we'll probably have to go back and get an update from our transport team on that one. But, yeah, I'm not sure if there's too much more I can add at this stage on that, but we'll certainly speak to them and get back to you if that's okay.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey was next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the question I would have asked has already been answered by the previous answers, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Goldsack.
Good morning, John. With regards to following on from Councillor Hayes' question around the precept and one thing and another, for the benefit of everybody, could you explain the timescales for when that decision would have to be made, please? And also who actually owns that decision and makes that decision should there be a mayoral precept?
Yeah, so the as you're aware, we go out to consultation following the board meeting on Wednesday. According to the Constitution, it's a minimum of 4 week. What we're proposing to have this time round is 6 weeks. So we will be taking the consultation responses first of all to the strategy in the middle of January, and then it will be going to board at the end of January for a decision. It will be part of the mayor's budget, and that forms a different approval route to the rest of the combined authority budget, and that's set out in the finance order. It will be a decision made by the board, and the mayor's budget will be carried unless it is vetoed by, I think, two-thirds majority of the members or substitute members present and voting. And those would include any person who is not, or members would not include any person who is not a member of a constituent council. So that would not include the mayor or the chair of the business board.
If I could just, as a quick follow-up to that then, John, am I right in saying then that means that we will be working with the parties that are the interim to the current mayor's health situation? So all those decisions will be made in the absence of Mayor Nick and under the new interim setup?
Well, I think the mayor would need to put forward his budget. I mean, we'll have to check with the monitoring officer exactly how this would work. But my understanding is that the mayor would need to put forward his budget. It does go through a process. The mayor wouldn't ordinarily be able to vote on that decision. and the deputy mayor being a member of the one of the constituent councils, I would expect would be able to vote on that. But again, it might be something that the monitoring officer will be able to clarify.
Thank you very much, John. Councillor Dew.
Thank you, Chair. If you're just indulging, I've got two slightly different ones. The first is just getting straight in my own mind around the public transport strategy, and just trying to figure out how this links into the Greater Peterborough combined bus strategy that they're running at the moment. Are we linking the two together? Because from where I'm sitting here, it doesn't look like we are. Sometimes it may well be that the answer is yes, but certainly there's a lot going on with South Cambs and the city, and it's bleeding across into Huntingdonshire and other areas as well. So I'm just trying to make sure we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. And the second one is a slightly different one, picking up on the back of the Mayor's precept. I remember when this authority was set up, the idea was it would attract more inward investment to enable us to deliver more on the local basis. It strikes me that if we go the route of where we are now, saying we might have to raise a precept just to keep the books balanced, it's almost smacks of delivering less and we're paying more for it. So I've got some severe reservations. That might be a political thing for Nick or the interim mayor in due course. It might not be fair to ask the officers for their opinion on that, but the man in the street's going to say, we were promised this, that, or the other would arrive, there'd be more. And actually, if we look at the last 4 years, very little has been delivered that wasn't on the table. If you look at what we've delivered, the University in Peterborough, Kingsdyke, they're all projects that have been going a long while, and so it might not be for today, but your thoughts, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just to come in quickly to say we have the draft bus strategy as our next item, and perhaps the linkage of the strategies might be better there. If there's anything you've got to add on a financial angle to that, John, then please do, or Rob.
No, I think probably you've kind of summed it up there. I think we'll leave it to the transport team to talk about the linking up of strategies. And yes, I think probably talking about inward investment is probably a conversation for the politicians rather than the finance team.
Apologies for being cheeky.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. We heard just now that there is I think I heard there's a fixed budget for the 30 years of £20 million a year. So presumably that is not taking into account inflation. So therefore, something like some other form of income is going to be needed fairly soon if we got the inflation that currently we're facing. So I'd like the officers' views on that. Second question is, for completeness, I understand there is another form of income that's available, which is a business rate. Could we have some more information about that, please, along the same lines as we had about the precept? Thank you.
I'll pick up the first question. I might ask Rob to talk about the business rates issue. But yes, you're absolutely right. We are very conscious that the 30-year timeline at and £20 million per year with inflation at 10-12% does very much eat into our the real value of the funding that we get. One of, as was previously just in the previous agenda item, one of the work streams that is part of the improvement plan is looking at sustainable future funding. So there are a number of potential financial freedoms, as they call it, that the combined authority and other combined authorities have, and we will need to look at different ways of securing funding. There is, as you be aware, recently there's been a move towards bidding for funds, as opposed to the previous sort of devolution ideal of having a single pot that a combined authority could use and to make decisions more more local than having a bidding system would suggest. And there are as part of the autumn statement, there was discussion about trailblazer authorities, which might in future enable a bit more in terms of having single pots for local decision making about how that's going to be spent. But yeah, we're hugely conscious that it is an ongoing issue that we need to address. And one of those work streams is we'll be looking into that. But I don't know if Rob wants to pick up on the business rates point.
Yeah, happy to. So yes, we are one of the few combined authorities that have a power to raise a business rate supplement. That's an additional 2p on the pound that we can charge all ratepayers in the combined authority area. So that's an additional tax on commercial property, effectively. The reason it's not considered in the current budget paper is because the process for implementing one takes significantly longer and more convoluted route than raising a council tax precept. You have to set out a prospectus, do a significantly longer consultation process with businesses. You have to show how the project specifically delivers economic growth. And if the business rate precept is a significant element of the funding for that project, you also have to ballot all ratepayers, and you need support from both 50% of the absolute number of ratepayers, and that support has to represent 50% of the total value paid of rateable value. So it is definitely an option the combined authority can look at in the longer term, whether for an enhanced bus network or another project. But it was not deliverable in the short amount of time between when we knew that the bus network was facing this critical issue after the withdrawal of service and the next financial year.
Thank you, Rob. That sounds quite a process.
Yes, thank you very much. It's obviously is a more complicated business altogether, and it's not on the table at the moment and probably won't be for some time.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Just looking at the improvement framework, there's reference in section 5.3, which says scrutiny should happen a decent time before the decision comes to be made. And at the moment, we're running, I think, 2 days ahead of decision taking. Is that right? Is there going to be decisions made on the 30th?
The budget won't be decided until
The
February.
budget. Okay, all right. But we have had that situation, haven't we? Yeah. So it's a reasonable point. So now we're in a position to give a signal to the board about what they might want to be thinking about when it comes to their decision in January.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're looking at? And
And
so I just think from the conversation that we've had, there is a message, isn't there, which relates to these bus services. We're looking at a deficit. The officers are exploring ways in which that deficit might be managed with 3 options, and none of those options look particularly attractive, frankly, given the monies that are available. A was maintain the existing, which is looking at 7 million as matters stand. Could be worse because of the increasing costs that the bus operators are facing and the potential withdrawal of even more services. We've got 1, which is the affordable, which means a reduction in the services. And then there's the 3rd one, which seems to be out of reach, which is an improvement. But when you look at the bus strategy, which we're going to be looking at in a moment, it's a very, very strong case, is there not, for improving the bus services. So we have to come to a point where we're actually saying to the board, signaling to the board, this is the direction of travel we need to be looking at. And it's, and as Councillor Hayes signalled, this is not a great time to be increasing council tax. But at the same time, it's not a great time to be leaving people abandoned without bus services. And so we face as politicians a conundrum, and to come to a point where we actually have got to say, well, look, we think this would be a focus on this, look at this as a way of resolving all of these competing interests.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 points, I think, and they've sort of slightly been touched on, but the paper says that the consultation finishes on the 13th of January. It then goes to the board at the end of January. So obviously we don't meet again before the 13th of January. So, and I know it was a massive bone of contention last year, but so my first question is, are we going to be able to comment on the budget that John says is obviously being updated prior on the back, I think it's the 28th of January or whatever the date is? That will be the first question. The second one, and again, John touched on this, is in terms of the CPCA bidding for more money, because obviously the government seems to have gone to, rather than just giving loads of money drawn down, you've got to bid for individual projects. And what we've got here, I'm a bit underwhelmed by, to be quite honest. So it'd be interesting to know what we've got in the pipeline in terms of bidding for those further monies. And then the final point is on 2.10. We talk about this estimated 7 million cost. Does that include the current cost of Ting, which is the trial to the west of Huntingdon and St Neots, and in terms of carrying that on at the current rate? Because if it is, I mean, if we're looking at the 7 million and that's the option we go to, then if the GCP get their way, we're going to have loads of buses in Cambridge and virtually the rest of the county having nothing. So we're going to have a two-tier system. Those would be my 3 points. And you may not want to answer one or two of those comments.
Thank you. Yes, I think I mean, as you be aware, that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee is one of the named sort of bodies that we need to consult with. So yes, it would be useful to put something in the diary so that we can just one. That's in terms of our diary. Or the timetable, there are a couple of notes in there to be confirmed relating to overview and scrutiny. So I think we do need to have an opportunity to come back and do a proper consultation with you during the consultation period, if that can be scheduled. And obviously, usually there is again an opportunity to talk to the committee in advance of each of the board meetings. The board to approve the budget is scheduled for the 25th of January. Obviously, it will be tight in terms of being able to gather and make sense of all the consultation responses in advance of the board meeting. But yes, I think we do need to have an opportunity to discuss this further when we've got more information on the consultation with the committee. In terms of the bidding for more funds, yes, we are across the organisation. We are looking at all options and all opportunities. Sometimes those are not very obvious in terms of the lead in time. They tend to have a very tight turnaround in terms of being able to bid in for those funds. And we are looking at, again, part of the improvement plan is looking at ways in which we can better identify what is coming through in terms of monitoring sort of government initiatives and opportunities for funds, and how we align the organisation to that. And in terms of the £7 million, I believe it does include Ting, but again, I think probably Rob might be able to provide a bit more of the detail on that. hoping?
Effectively, it does, but the current TIN contract was for a year, or is for a year, to, I believe, November 2023, which was already within approved budgets for the bus service improvement budget, which sits outside of the passenger transport area currently. That's only there, that funding exists only till the end of November 2023. There is not currently funding included for future years beyond that.
Okay, thank you. And could I ask Edwina Adefahinti to come in to talk about the consultation on this, please? Edwina.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Just to comment on the consultation, as part of the consultation, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee will be consulted. What would normally happen is that your comments will be received in via email, or if you prefer, then perhaps an extraordinary general meeting could be set up, but that's totally dependent on the committee. Then your comments will be included in any report that goes to the board. So the board is quite is clear on what your position is on the consultation. I hope that answers the question that was asked.
Thank you, Edwina. Are we going to be in the position where if we discuss this as our next meeting in January, we will be too late to feed into the consultation? Are we going to need to feed into the consultation during the consultation process?
So during the consultation process, questions are sent out to everyone. So I can't remember the start date, but you will receive questions as members of the Overview and Scrutiny, that way before January 13th, which I believe is the end date. I may be getting the date wrong for, so you will have 6 weeks, whatever the date that the consultation starts, you will be part of those consulted within those 6 weeks. And you have those 6 weeks to come back with your comments. So there will be sufficient time to respond to the consultation questions.
That sounds to me like early January then, because if the consultation is 6 weeks, that would extend into middle of January. That seems to me something we could perhaps seek to do. We wouldn't need to do that as a we would need to do that as a full meeting, wouldn't we, if we were going to discuss that and reach a conclusion. Councillor Sharp, Councillor Goldsack.
Yeah, just very quickly coming. That was the point I was trying to tease out, because I know last year we had our January ONS meeting, but we were told quite clearly that we couldn't. Basically, we were out of time in terms of consultation, so our comments weren't valid. So that was really where my question was getting at in terms of what we needed to do. Because obviously there are going to, as John says, there are going to be changes to this budget. Obviously, it's a moving feast. So yeah, I think we have to look at whether that's another formal meeting, which is going to be obviously difficult at Christmas and everything else. But
I think we'd have to look at early January, wouldn't we, rather than before Christmas now. Councillor Goldsack was next on this point, and I'm aware that Councillor Coles is waiting to talk about other.
Edwina, I might be missing something here, because you've just said that we will be consulted as members of ONS. I get that. Who is the consultation for? Is this every member of public in Cambridgeshire, or in Peterborough? Who's the consultation for on this, please?
So, okay, I think John wants to, but the consultation really is for every resident in CPCA's area. So anyone who is a resident and who has an interest will be consulted, so which would include yourselves as members and members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
So I want to be absolutely clear about this. The GCP are consulting on what they're consulting on, and that's coming to an end. There's then going to be a public consultation on this exercise, with the public going to be consulting on, right? And your public consultation is coming to the end of the. So we're going to consult, or hopefully consult, when I bear in mind percentage of returns, but we're going to consult every member living in the area. get the answers back on the 13th of January at the latest, and then you've got about 2 weeks to have that to be ready for the board. Do you really think that that's achievable?
That is.
Do you want me to come in there? I think Edwina, either I frozen or
sorry.
Edwina's frozen, but
I think
yeah.
Edwina might be back with us.
Okay.
No. Edwina's clearly having connection problems. John, perhaps
Yeah.
you could.
So what we've done in the past, as part of the constitution, the consultation needs to go out to all the constituent councils, plus the business board, plus the overview and scrutiny committee. But also what we do is have we've set up or in the process of setting up a microsite, and there will be a social media campaign to invite every member of the public within the combined authority region to log onto the site. There will be the documentation will be there, and they will be asking a series of questions to feedback on. Either answering the correct questions directly, or providing some additional sort of narrative feedback. We've done that in the past with various degrees of engagement. I think it was significantly better last year than in previous years. But yes, obviously it will be tight, but we will be prepared to be able to take in all of the responses and provide a summary document to the committee and to the board, as part of that reporting back process.
Thank you. Councillor Goldsack,
just to come back, I think Councillor Smith raised an absolutely valid point earlier, that we should be setting the direction to the board to listen to from this committee. And quite frankly, I think with the pressure that the officers of this authority are under, they're lacking in their numbers, the recruitment situation we're in, I think we're setting ourselves up here to fail. We've also got the leadership of this is currently, the mayor is in the sad situation of his health situation, and we've got an interim following for this. I'm not sitting here extremely confident that we're going to come out with a well-run process that's been well listened to, that people have had the chance to put into. And as a member of Overview and Scrutiny, I'd like that flagged and minuted now, because I just don't feel comfortable with it.
I think partly the issue of timing and the short period of time to evaluate the public responses is that we're giving such a lengthy period of consultation to go into. So it's a balance at one end or the other, isn't it, surely? But we certainly need, I think, to have a meeting in early January to come up with a formal response to this. And I think we need to be searching for dates for that outside this meeting.
Are we talking about having a meeting in January to come up with our response, or are we talking about a meeting in January before the board meeting to discuss the responses that the board will then look at?
Well, we have our January meeting anyway, but part of the discussion, I was understanding the discussion to be about how the Combined Authority Overview and Scrutiny Committee derived its own response within the consultation period. If you do not wish to exercise that, then we don't need a meeting in early January. But if we want to exercise that right to respond as a committee, we need to have a meeting, a formal meeting, in order to do so, because it's a decision.
It's my personal opinion, and that's why we're on these committees. I would have much more interest in looking at the result of the exercise, to then put an overview and scrutiny view to the board as to how this should be taken and looked at. I'm going to respond, now that I know it exists, I'm going to respond as an individual, both as a member of, as an elected local member, but also as a resident of this county.
Yep, fine. In the past, there has been the criticism that we have not met in time to contribute to the consultation. If you're saying you do not want us to meet in time to contribute to the consultation, but to wait until the consultation has concluded and to comment on residents' views, that is entirely a matter for this committee, and it's entirely proper for us to do. But I think we need to decide which we want to do rather than constantly saying that the other arrangement was wrong. So do we feel that we wish to not have a meeting to put a view formally from this committee in the consultation period, but do we wish to wait until after the consultation period is over? Councillor Dew, Councillor Smith.
The answer is yes to both of those. We've got to have an input beforehand, because one part of our role is to positively react to the proposed budget. So we've got to have our input. And then also, if we're going to have this wider consultation that's going to feed on the back of that, where we are just one consultee, we need to do that as well. I think we need both. If members disagree with me, I'm more than happy to, but I don't see how we can work effectively. If we're going to just scrutinise what's going in, that's one thing. But if we want to scrutinise what's coming out, that's another. So, you know, I think one of the things Councillor Coldsack was suggest. I know we're trying to avoid having too many meetings, but actually, if we're not careful, we'll avoid doing the job we're here for and scrutinising it properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
I was going to raise the point that Councillor Goldsack was going to make, actually. And I think it's really important that we have sight of the evaluation of the responses so that we can send advice to the board.
Okay.
But then what Councillor Sharp said kind of worried me, because from what you said, Councillor Sharp, was that in previous years, this committee was too late in making its comments because it was post-consultation, and therefore this committee's views weren't taken into account. So we're in a bit of a bind as to, you know, I think it takes us into having to do both, frankly, because if there's a risk of us not having a voice in this as a committee, then we have to respond during the consultation period. But I think we also need to see what's happened on the evaluation and then just take our chances as to whether or not the board listens to what we have to say post-consultation.
Thank you. Councillor Sharp, and then I'm going to go back to Edwina with a question about this.
Yeah, just a couple of points. Picking on Councillor Smith's point, it really only happened last year that the budget process was not great, and I think that was virtually unanimous across the members at the time of our committee last year, and we ended up where we did consider the budget in January, but we were told that, you know, it was too late for that to be taken account of by the board. I probably agree with Councillor Dew, actually, that I don't like more meetings, but I think if we're going to give a response as a committee, then we need another meeting. But equally, and officers may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I would have thought if the board are going to consider the consultation responses on the 25th of January, then we should have sight of those on the 23rd of January. I know that's only, their meeting just before, I know that's only 2 days before, but I can't see any other way that we're going to see those. But I take Councillor Smith's and Councillor Goldsack's points totally. I'm just trying to think of the most practical way forward.
Can I just ask Edwina, assuming that her internet connection holds up this time, for a view, if we choose as a committee not to meet during the consultation period, but to wait until our meeting in late January, 2 days before the board meeting, to comment on the budget proposals in the light of what the public has said and other stakeholders have said, if that is what we choose to do, to meet 2 days before the board only, will anything we say at that meeting be taken into account by the board at its meeting 2 days later? Or have we missed the boat at that point?
So at that point, on the 23rd, more than likely the papers would have been published on that day. I can just look at the dates because the staff requirement to be published 5 days before a meeting. So I think that might just take us to that very day. But what can then be done is the chair of the board can be asked to consider the item as a late item, because they do have powers under the Constitution to do that on the legislation. So your comments could be accepted as a late item. The other way to do it is to publish the report, but say that an appendix is to follow. And that appendix will contain the comments of this committee. So it's already published, it will meet the deadline, but the contents of the appendix would not be available for the public to view until after the 23rd. So there's several ways to do it so that your views can actually filter back to the CA board and can be considered on the 30th.
Thank you. I mean, my understanding of our powers is that as a committee, we have a wide-ranging set of powers to ask questions and make comment on matters that are considered by the board, and I don't see that the budget should be any different in that respect. How we do that procedurally in terms of publication dates and holding back appendices is a kind of a bit part of that, but the general principle is that we should be able to make comment on anything that's going to the board. I'm not going to take any more questions and comments about this because we've been at this for some time, but I'm going to ask for a show of hands on whether members feel, in view of what we've heard, do you want a meeting in the first half of January during the consultation period, or do you not? So can I ask for those in favour of holding a meeting in the consultation period to please indicate? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Right, that is overwhelmingly in favour of the additional meeting that some members are so keen to avoid, but there we go. Okay, thank you very much. That now puts that bit of it to bed. I'm keen to move on to other business because we have several other matters of significant business, but I'm aware that Councillor Coles wanted to come in. No, lost the will, I think. So thank you very much, members. We were asked to note the principle and approaches and note the significant pressure on passenger transport forecasts. I think we have done that. So thank you very much, and thank you, John. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Edwina. And we will now move on. So the next item is draft bus strategy, and we have Oliver Howarth with us. Hello, Oliver. So, Oliver, would you like to briefly introduce this item, please? Thank you.
Right, okay. The bus strategy, the aim of the bus strategy is to pave the way for a bus network that's convenient, attractive and easy to use. It is effectively a way of setting out where we might go in the next 5 years. It's trying to define what powers, what courses of action we might like to take and make sure that any, I won't give examples, but fundamentally, as long as they're all mentioned, then we can come back and consider them at a later date. So it's an overarching framework document saying this is what we'd like to do. Right, so it lists a series of outcomes, which are all, as you'd expect, positive. So a comprehensive bus network, better connections people, part of a fully integrated and planned transport system, more affordable network, simplified fares, transitioning to low emission vehicles, a more understandable network with clear and easy ticketing, faster, more reliable journeys, effective bus priority measures, high quality passenger waiting facilities, excellent service quality, and doubling of bus passengers based on the 2019 levels by 2030, less traffic and congestion by attracting car users to buses, and a better bus infrastructure. So, and we could go on from there. A lot of things which clearly are going to be costly to discuss, to put in place in their entirety. So really, I'm bringing this forward for us to talk about because I'm sure that I'm going to get lots of questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Oliver. I'm going to turn first to Councillor Hay, who is our bus lead member and who has also submitted some questions in advance to which there are answers. So, Councillor Hay.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Oliver, for that nice introduction. I must admit, it sounded lovely. My concern is cost. And yes, I did put some questions to you beforehand and you very kindly answered them. So I'm not going to read them all out in detail because I understand they will form part of the minutes. But I would like to touch on one or two of them. I mentioned about the large-scale investment needed in the Greater Cambridge area in order with the aim to reduce traffic levels in the city by 10 to 15% on the 2011 levels. My concern was the rural areas, as you well understand. And since I put some of these questions, the combined authority has invested heavily in creating, as you put it, 23 new rural bus services. Can I point out these are not new? They are replacing the ones that Stagecoach
Absolutely,
axed.
yes.
Unfortunately, not in all cases have they replaced like with like. On quite a number of routes, they are less frequent and they're at the different times. And in one particular case, Chatteris to March, my understanding is it's still non-existent. My main concern on this was the number of school children who use public transport to get to school. Now, where children are eligible for free school transport, then it's down to Cambridge County Council. And I understand they have put on taxis and minibuses to enable those children to get to and from school. But we all know that there is a proportion of parents who have made a conscious decision to send their child to a school other than their local ones. And these are the children who have been stranded. Now, in your reply, you indicated that the combined authority are liaising with the county council to see whether it's possible to align services as CCC managed school transport. Is this to cover these children?
It is. What we're looking at straight away is a mapping process to understand what might be possible, what might not be.
Yep. If it is to cover these children, will the combined authority be making a contribution to the cost of this school transport?
I would not, that would be so dangerous in terms of opening the floodgates to lots of people wanting free travel for their children, that I would not think that would be economic.
So basically, the county council would have to cover the cost, or they would have to charge the parents of these particular children.
What we're looking at, sorry, Councillor, what we're looking at is effectively trying to find ways in which we can divert retime vehicles so that the service can be made with little cost. We obviously can't promise on that, but we are actively seeking a way to do this in a systematic manner.
Moving on from that, I was concerned because the bus review first started in 2018. Here we are 4 years on, and this was something I think at the time we expected to take 6 months to a year. I fully appreciate we've had the pandemic in between. In part of your answer, you said the bus service improvement plan was created in late 2021. And you have to do this annually, and we've been given an extension to send in ours late because we're working on a bus service improvement plan. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah. Within the bus strategy, it said that the National Bus Strategy was released in early 2021. We improved one submitted to the Department for Transport, and it said, given the uncertainties around local bus market and inability to pursue bus franchising at that point, the BSIP did not attract government funding. How confident are we that we've got everything in place this time round to get government funding?
That depends more on the members and the acceptance of a balanced way of operating the services. I can't really say now what the members are going to wish to see.
That concerns me because I would hope that officers within our transport team had looked at the reasons why it failed first time round and ensure we've got all our ducks in place to make sure that we do get funding this time round.
If I could just come in on that, Councillor Hay, I think you'll be aware from your previous report that one of the reasons that we were told we did not get the money for our bus service improvement plan was that we did not show sufficient commitment to road pricing, and that is very much a member decision.
take your point, although I might not agree with road pricing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hay. Councillor you said that you in the previous debate on the budget, you had some bus strategy points you wanted to raise, so I was going to come to you next.
That's great. Thank you, Chair. No, the question I asked before when you were over there, so hopefully you don't need to repeat it all, was just how the two bus strategies, i.e. the one that we're doing as the combined authority and then the Greater Cambridgeshire Partnership, we're obviously doing something that's running very much, I don't know, I can't get to grips with it's running in tandem, alongside, or totally independent. I wonder if you could give us some input as how you are or aren't working together as, or rather we are and aren't working together as two teams. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we are working together. There is ongoing talks at a high level between the two. The CPCA is investigating a new bus depot for Peterborough, which would allow vehicles to be charged up, electric vehicles, so we could start running those, which with the current stagecoach depot in Peterborough is not going to be possible because the depot is over 100 years old, designed for trams, and really is in the middle of a major housing area and retail area. So we need a new depot, and we're going to procure that on the basis, we hope, of it being open to all bus operators, so that we can then have free competition in a franchise for bus services without individual operators incurring additional costs of setting up depots.
And with regard to the Cambridgeshire Partnership, because they've got, the Cambridge City and South Cambs have got their own body of work they're doing, where they're, they've got, the low fare buses provided across the region, not just them, it's bleeding out elsewhere. Do you have any input into that as well, please?
We do, and quite a lot of that is involved in, effectively, we have very common aims, and they've got more money than we have, so we need to talk to that. Equally, there are things which we can put in terms of flexibility, understanding how things can work, and pushing the network out up the county as far as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Goldsack.
Thank you. Firstly, let me say thank you for the report. I think I'm being quite rude about it. I like the word draft in it because that means there's more to come.
Yes.
But actually, I think it's you've done well to lay this out. Three very quick points from where we're at and what we're reading here. First and foremost, and I think it's been across all around the room today. I actually live in a rural village that gets a 7:30 bus in and a 6:15 bus home. That's it. So elderly residents to get to doctors, GPs, hospitals, no chance, nothing. So they're relying on other transportation, which lo and behold is a car. That's what they're relying on. So we've got to look to reach that, not just for the capital. We're overlooking some of the major impacts of what's going on now. And one of the biggest blights on our society at the moment is social isolation. There are people, particularly the elderly and most vulnerable, that haven't come out of their homes much than they need to do. And we have to be able to enable that. And the best way to enable that is through, bus as the chosen route. So we need the bus service to be able to do that. The second point is, if you if you want to commute into Cambridge, and you want to go from Soham, which is my ward town, you catch the saved bus, not a new bus, but the saved bus, which is actually running less frequently than it did before the review, but it's still there, it's still hanging on. And you get a bus that gets into either Newmarket or Ely, then you can go on to Cambridge, if that makes sense. But you get into the Newmarket place 3 minutes after the bus to Newmarket has left. And I'm thinking that's smart, joined up thinking, that is, right? You get into the new Ely one 8 minutes after the bus to Cambridge is left. So, and my third point is the bus company that shall not be named within these walls ever again, that put us into this position largely, not entirely, but played a major part in putting us into the position. Their chief executive is on record as saying, why would I want to take a bus to a train station to a rival transportation organisation? That's on record, you know. So when we've got commercial bus operations that are refusing to go to train stations, in the new train stations in Soham was the one I'm talking about, because they can't they won't take a bus down there, and we're pushing for active travel. And I can tell you now that this authority dropped an active travel investment in the town of Soham off the back of the new rail station because the bus wouldn't go there, after spending tens of thousands of pounds on a public consultation as to how the road should be better laid out. Now, what I'm saying here is we've got to get a grip with this with franchising. We've got to get the grip with the bus companies and remind these bus companies that they work for us. We need them, but fundamentally, they should be delivering for us to beat social isolation and to get in the same. Look, we're not expecting a bus every 15 minutes out in rural Isleham or Chatteris even, or some of the more obscure parts of our wonderful county. But there must be a service that needs to be joined up. So, sorry, a bit of a ramble there, but there were 3 points I did make.
Yes, I take point one about social inclusion, though obviously that's then comes down to how do we serve all these places, and we're experimenting with demand responsive transport at the moment, which is actually doing very well, but that's a matter for the board meeting on Wednesday. I take the points about joining up the bus services, and we'll raise this to the bus operators about connecting buses. So, and we'll also raise that at the next bus operator forum in a couple of weeks' time. So I take an action to try and persuade my bus operators to do what we want. And finally, yes, I hear the comments about Stagecoach. I don't think I can really comment on them though. In terms
if I could just come back on one point, I'm absolutely intrigued as to the success or not of Ting. Yes, I know it's operating in mainly the St Neots, Huntingdon area. Demand level, there is a degree of demand level transportation in East Cambridgeshire, although not in our area of East Cambridgeshire. I think it's in the Whichford, Haddenham, Streatham area. There is a zipper, I think it's called, bus that people can use there as well. What I'm hearing is the incurrent costs of providing Ting per service are astronomical. So, well, we need to see some output of that, and maybe we need to see some of them interim, preferably before some sort of review on whether precepts should go up, so that we can understand whether these things are affordable or not. It's great to see you shake your head, and I welcome it, but we can't see that from facts in front of us. So we really, from the bus authority, we need to know whether demand reactive transport is real and going to be rolled out, because that could well be the answer for Isleham, Prickwillow, and remote villages elsewhere.
Yes,
but not if that's putting a cost on seeing 7 million going to 12, is it?
Yeah, I don't feel I can really say a lot about it because it's been called into board to discuss exactly these numbers, and therefore I think there'd be trouble if I preempted that, unless you overrule me and tell me to.
Sorry, if we're an overview and scrutiny committee and something's been called into board based on numbers, then surely we should be able to have a look at that.
Okay. Right. Okay.
No, I don't put the office. I've not got the authority to put you on the spot to do that, but we've got the monitoring officer on board. I would have thought that would have been a fair thing for us to discuss, wouldn't it? Unless it's private and confidential of a commercial nature for the bus companies, but
I'm not aware it is, and I'm not aware that the board has actually been given the details of the reasons for the call-in either. I couldn't see that in the board papers anyway, which seemed surprising.
Surprising. Sorry.
Can I? May I, Chair?
Yes, please indeed. Please, Edwina, thank you.
Thank you. So I will answer the questions the other way around. So with regard to the call-in, there hasn't been any grounds or reasons given for the call-in. I've just circulated exactly how the call-ins come in. So I, as the monitoring officer, haven't got further papers to circulate to overview and scrutiny, but there is a paper which has been drafted, which has been published on the call-in, setting out the background, which overview and scrutiny members would have access to because they're published. And then if I go on to answer the other question about overview and scrutiny, yes, it is the responsibility or the duty of overview and scrutiny to basically scrutinize executive decisions. So, whether they've been implemented or not. So yes, it is within the purview of this committee to ask questions about the numbers of ting. But I think perhaps maybe what Oliver was trying to say is that those matters are, that there are papers, I think they've been published. I don't believe they're exempt in any form. However, we, as a committee, you would have to bear in mind the combined authorities' duties towards confidentiality and not disclosing information that has to do with the financial nature or with an individual. So yes, that will be my answer to that. I'm not sure what Oliver's got in his possession at the moment. But the short answer is, as overview scrutiny, you can scrutinize the decisions of the executive.
Thank you.
Right.
That does raise for me a very real question about being members of the board being able to hold up decisions of executive committees by calling them in, giving absolutely no reason at all for why they have done so. If I want to call in a matter on my own district authority, there is a form that I have to download and complete, which says why I am calling it in, who I am calling as witnesses, all of those matters, so that it is crystal clear why a decision of an executive body of the council is actually being held up in that way. And I think that should go somewhere, and I think that we should be asking for that to be looked at, because it is unacceptable that people can go, actually, I'm just going to hold this decision up without giving any reason at all for doing so. And I think we need to ask for that, please, Edwina, to go somewhere. Councillor Goldsack.
May I make a suggestion which I think may help the good officer here today stay in line with Edwina's recommendations? We've just voted on having an additional meeting. I think we've just voted on. I think there's a real opportunity to have an additional item here to look to review Ting and the papers that have been published, because I think it would be wrong of us to debate it and do it now without having the papers in front of us and haven't read them.
The call-in will go to the board in 2 days' time, as I understand it, so it may well be after the event.
Well, I think the question here is that, sorry, my initial train of thought was we don't know enough about Ting. Ting is running for the next year.
Yep.
I will assume this is an interim report, so we will have access to that, which will be information to us, and we can scrutinise decisions after they're made as well as influence them before they're made. I would suggest that it might be a pertinent. I'm trying to find a smooth path here, because I don't want to put the officer on the spot really. But I'm trying to. I think that's a logical thing to do.
I think that's right, and I'm quite happy to see that added to a meeting in early January to have a conversation about that. Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the report. I'm quite interested in the DRT proposal. Of course, we have South Lincolnshire and Northamptonshire that both serve into Peterborough, and then you have the East Cambridgeshire one and Ting. Is there a proposal to have a demand service that goes up north and south? My second part of the question is, like the busway that was promised, I don't know how many years ago, that has only got as far as St Leo's, is that also part of the programme to think about further north-south integration between Peterborough and wider Cambridgeshire?
So, sorry, I am certainly looking at the possibility of better services between, Peterborough, Huntingdon and Cambridge. And there is the opportunity and the road space there for it to do so at the moment. So that would make sense.
And in terms of the DRT, the other examples in South Lincolnshire and Northamptonshire, for example, are they part of what you're looking at to see about the value of introducing DRT wider throughout Cambridgeshire, the rural areas?
There are actually 3 different sorts of DRT running in Greater Peterborough, and the Ting service has been developed to be very different to all 3 of them. So although it's DRT, it's a completely different sort of bus service to those.
Thank you very much. Councillor Miscandlin.
Thank you very much, Chair. I live in a very, very rural area. There is no option but to use a car. And I classed as an elderly person. There are numerous elderly people. Villages are cut off because there is no bus service. The constant question from all my constituents and outside my area is, when are we going to get a bus service? Because there is no transport. They have to use a free service to get to the doctors, to get to the hospital. There is nothing. And this is out in the north of Fenland area where there is nothing. The first bus is at 7:15 in the morning. After that, you've got nothing until gone 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's absolutely appalling. And there's nothing in this report that says anything's going to improve within the Fenland area. And I am the current chairman of Fenland, and I get constant barracking from the constituents of the whole of Fenland is, what are you doing about our transport? Because we've got none. And this report doesn't produce anything. Other areas get it, guided busways from the county. We get nothing. The forgotten area of the county.
I do talk regularly with your two transport officers, and but I take that point on board, Councillor. It simply comes down to how much money there is, and I've inherited a broken bus network, and stage which of them broken it again.
Can I come back on that?
Briefly.
You said there's so much money, but the perception is by the constituents of our area is the money's not coming to us. It's going elsewhere. Why aren't we getting some of it? You know, everyone talks about levelling up. Well, we've levelled down. And that is a very, very moot point with everyone in the area. We're not getting a fair shake of the purse to get us transport, to get us around the county. People around the county or around the area have no option but to use cars. If you want to go a greener, cleaner thing, get some buses coming our way with charging points.
Thank you, Councillor Scanlon. I'm not seeing anything else, and I think I'm keen to move on. So thank you very much indeed, Oliver, for. Oh, Councillor Smith wants to.
So I think what I've heard in this discussion, which has been really good, and in passing, the report is splendid. Thank you. Is this question of value for money? So were services really expensive? It calls into question because it may not be maximising overall utility, that money could be spent serving other communities where there's greater demand. But then, Councillor Miscallon, you've just set out a case which is of the social, human value that attaches to this, where it would turn out to be more expensive, say per head or per passenger. And so where does that leave us with the value case? So I do think that we've got to reflect on that and work out how we do attack how we define the value of these subsidies in public transport and for the rural areas, which I have to say I have a great deal of sympathy for, even though I'm a city person. I do see the point that what you're making, and that this combined authority really does need to make the most of the resources it has available to improve the services to serve your communities.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Smith. So we have reviewed the draft bus strategy and noted the timeline, and we have discussed the questions. So thank you very much indeed, Oliver. Thank you, members. And I will move us swiftly on to Adrian Cannard, who has been waiting very patiently for a climate plan action update, which I apologise in advance. I suspect we will not be able to give the time and attention to that I would have wished in view of the time we have remaining to us. But Adrian, over to you to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, committee. Yeah, so in front of you, you've got essentially an update report on where we are with our climate action work with the authority. A number of key things since I think I last came and spoke to you about this. So we have agreed a climate action plan as an authority covering the next 3 years. We set aside in the budget a number of allocations that came through the last budget round last year, and I've highlighted progress on those. So we've, out of the total £10 million allocation, we've taken through board business cases for about 6 million of that, and we've got another 2 business cases going on Wednesday, which take up the bulk of that allocation. I've also reported in there on the latest climate statistics for our area, which are, because their national statistics are somewhat dated because they report after the event. So it's the year that covers the first year of COVID. And so it reflects the reduction in emissions nationally through changes in working behaviours and travel. And you'll note that, picking perhaps some of the conversation you just had in the last one, because our area is quite unique in terms of our emissions, in terms of high emissions from land use and high emissions from transport, we had less of a reduction than the UK average. So that's something that obviously we're very keen to address through the work that you've just discussed on the bus strategy, but also the local transport plan review that's going ahead. And in terms of next reporting to the board, we're due to go back in March with a report on annual progress on the Climate Action Plan. And we will be meeting Baroness Brown shortly to discuss progressing the Independent Commission's work.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Any questions from members? Councillor Goldsack.
Just a quick one, Adrian, and thank you for the report. Is your climate action plan linked, and do you work with the Transport Committee?
So there are a number of significant transport actions in the Climate Action Plan which are being picked up through the work on the review of the local transport plan, which will go to the Transport Committee. So two key items there. The consultants that are supporting that work are looking at the different ways in which we can meet the net zero target, which government has indicated will be a key determinant in how much transport funding will come to authorities in the future. So it's very important we set out that route. And also there's some work underway in looking at individual infrastructure schemes in how we do the carbon accounting, i.e. the impact of those. So two key bits which are being reported up through the Transport Committee rather than through the board.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Chair. As you'll be aware, we had the local area energy plan in Peterborough, which identified the horrifying figure of £8.8 billion to retrofit all of our properties to make them properly insulated. And we've not had a great success in delivering Warm Homes capital funding, mainly because of the unavailability of the suppliers to fit. So I'm just wondering how you can cover that in terms of your plan to make sure that we hit the most significant amount of challenge, which is in insulating older homes. Thank you.
So the issue around capacity in the private sector has been picked up through the work on our skills side. So we have been looking to providers to essentially bring forward more skills training to allow people to get the skills necessary for installing alternative measures. In terms of the capital spend of the government's grant, then we do have, through the Sustainable Warmth Programme, more suppliers coming forward. But it is a nationwide issue in terms of capacity. Obviously, it's a big ramp up. But we're working with the both Peterborough and the Cambridgeshire side in terms of promoting the message around availability of those grants to try and make sure we've both lined people who can take advantage of it with the supply sector.
Thank you. For my mind, there may be those people who can afford to do it, who would like to do it if there was a supply that could fit it. It may well be that having the grants is not going to really be the successful way forward because people who can't afford it can't buy that sort of stuff in. So it's quite a difficult one to resolve, I think.
If I just come back on that, so there was an announcement literally in the last day or so, which is sort of extending the grant process. So obviously we'll look to see how that impacts locally and how we can best bring the money into our area and that's really picking up the willing to pay market, as currently the grant is mostly aimed at those unable to fund So, and in certain types of properties. So government's obviously recognised there is a more scope to deliver on this, and it's something we are looking at.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I suppose we sometimes wonder what should be the missions of the combined authority. It seems to me they should include things which can only be dealt with at a sort of geographic level, corresponding to the to Cambridgeshire and beyond. But one of the enablers, hopefully, and also unfortunately blockages in all of these plans is the electricity infrastructure. And indeed, I mean, this was a factor in our investment in the Waterbeach Renewable Energy Network project, where it took our officers at South Cambs many months even to have a first surgery meeting with UK Power Networks. And actually, that was only unblocked because of I had a chance meeting on the doorstep with the procurement manager, national procurement manager for UK Power Networks, who was able to give me the name of the right person for our officers to talk to. And I have a worry that many of our plans in Cambridgeshire will come to a grinding halt eventually, because whilst UK Power Networks in their Rio ED2 business plan really make an awful lot of flex as a way of sort of using digitalization to get more out of the existing network. That's a sort of a one-off digitalization bonus which won't recur. Meanwhile, one has to wonder whether UK Power Networks are deliberately introducing a bureaucratic delay in discussing new grid connections, because actually, although flexibility is a useful concept, it's really not the ultimate substitute for firm power grid capacity. And I've learned that any new capacity at the Burwell supergrid connection, which is where, that's our main connection, certainly for South Cambridgeshire, to the national network. There won't be any more new capacity there until 2032. I wonder whether the combined authority has a role there to hold UK Power Networks to task, or is that more the role of the county councils and Peterborough City Council? I just wondered your comments on that.
So the energy network and the challenges around it very much came out through our independent report, and the Climate Action Plan does have a couple of actions on energy in it, including looking at local energy planning. We've heard Peterborough had some funding and have taken that bit forward. We're now looking to cover the rest of Cambridgeshire in that strategic approach. So I think it very much is an issue for the combined authority, obviously working with constituent councils who are able to flag up to us where there are specific constraints. We did raise this at the recent visit of the National Infrastructure Commission, who did recognise that it's not exclusive to our area, but it is particularly felt in fast growth areas where the networks very much are slow to respond because they only deliver a capacity to approved growth. And quite often we find that our growth is ahead of what is described as approved in their context. So we have taken note of that, and we are making representations, and it's certainly something I think that we'll need, because it underpins so much. And we've heard about the challenges of charging in rural areas as well. So it is something that we are picking up.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Adrian. I think that's it from us. So thank you very much indeed for responding to members' questions. We've noted and commented as we were asked to do. So thank you, members. So we move on to item 9, which is our the forward plan of the combined authority. We've not received any updates from lead members, but we are required to appoint a new lead member for transport for this committee following the departure of Councillor Bagent from this committee. I understand that Councillor Goldsack has bravely thrust himself into the arena for this item. So is there anybody else who wishes to take part in this particular gladiatorial combat? No. No, apparently not. So are members happy to appoint Councillor Goldsack as Transport Lead Member? Thank you very much indeed, members. So item 10 then is the board agenda. I'm not aware that we have any particular questions for the board meeting, although we have a number of issues going there on which we have commented and discussed in advance and which we will want to look at again in January. We then have our work programme at item 11, and we have now added to that a penciled in meeting in the first half of January to look at the budget and to look at the question of the Ting service. You'll note that the work programme is now in a slightly different format. I think that works rather better in terms of clarifying responsibilities and who's taking things forward and so on. I don't want to have a long discussion about formats now, but if you feel that is not working as a format or you've got suggestions, please let officers have them. So is there anything else we need to add on the work programme at the moment? I'm not seeing anything, so thank you for that. The date of our next meeting is going to be the one in early January, and then our next scheduled meeting is Monday the 23rd of January at 11 o'clock in this building. So with that, at just 1 minute over my hoped for time of 1 o'clock, I'll close the meeting, and thank you, members, officers, for your attendance. Thank you very much.